Hi, I'm Matt Nesto, the editor-in-chief at PYMNTs.com, and I'm happy to be welcoming Chris Wassenaar. He's the Chief Risk Officer and General Counsel at Versapay to our conversation here today. We're talking about payment fraud. Chris, great to have you on.
Pleasure to be here.
So, wow, 'tis the season. Everybody's out there trying to move merchandise and get the deal done right now. As we, deal with this ever-changing global environment, just ups and downs, what are you seeing on the cusp of the new year with digital payments? And what are your predictions as far as tactics to hold back and to fight fraud for the year ahead?
Sure. So I think one of the most critical aspects that people have to do when they consider fraud is that they have to look at their entire digital ecosystem. And what I'm referring to specifically is the fragmentation that exists within that system. And that is all the multiple third-party service providers that folks use to engage, whether it's B2C or B2B businesses. You might have your own internal information technology infrastructure. You may use someone for internet connectivity, another for your shopping cart, and then even a third party to provide the delivery capabilities or the fulfillment of your orders. And understanding the full landscape of that ecosystem is the most important thing to prevent fraud.
And do you see big changes for the year ahead based on, I don't know, any macro headwinds or tailwinds that seem to emerge depending on the week?
Sure. The fun one for everybody is COVID, right? Trying to determine how much longer we're going to continue with this remote/hybrid work environment / in office. And then the continuing fragmentation that provides on security capabilities. You still have folks at home on home internet service providers. They're still connecting to larger corporate environments, and then they're continuing to interact with multiple third parties. So what we provided is all these different wonderful avenues for fraudsters to get into our ecosystem. And it only takes one organization within that supply chain, perhaps not to update their security patches for their devices, maybe for their network. And that allows folks an avenue into those businesses.
In prepping for this interview, there was a line that jumped out at me. It was like accepting payments digitally for the first time. Why so much emphasis on the first time? It's like a first date, maybe. You gotta, who is this person that I'm dealing with? Who is this vendor? Especially for businesses, especially for those on the retail side of things that are just hustling all the time, but all businesses that are dealing with outside entities.
Yeah, and I think one of the most incredible things about the rise in digital commerce is that it's opened up the total addressable market for everyone. Whether you're a mom and pop shop on a corner, now all of a sudden you can truly sell your businesses globally. But at the same time, by opening up yourself to the internet, you're actually inviting the fraudsters right in. So I always look with a very simple exercise that I take businesses through of all size, which is to literally whiteboard all of the different parties within their supply chain. And that's actually putting the boxes in and all the interactions between your customers, your suppliers, your third-party providers, and understanding how you communicate between all those different organizations, and then asking yourself whether to provide those services and those service offerings, do you need to share as much information as you sort of naturally do, or can you partition or wall off some of that access to protect your customers?
And what is the response to that whiteboard?
Well, so a lot of folks all of a sudden have an aha moment. They're like, wow, I didn't realize my card data is now transferred, that I've received in my shopping cart to 3 other parties in this process. I didn't realize when I outsourced my customer service duties to this third-party business that all of a sudden all of these other employees would have access to personally identifiable information of my customers. And it's a real light bulb moment, because all of a sudden they realize, wow, my entire business's reputation is dependent on people that I've never met before. Because that whole digital commerce ecosystem isn't just having an anonymous relationship with your customers. Many times it's having an anonymous relationship with both your employees and the third-party service providers that you're using.
And it's crazy too, for everything that I hear, the longer distance the transaction, and we talk a lot about cross-border e-commerce and the growth of that, and just cross-border transactions in general, not just e-commerce. the more touches there are on money in motion, and therefore the more risk.
No question about it. You simply can't have a direct interface between that consumer who's buying your goods and services, whether B2C in nature or B2B, without going through, again, those same supply chain interfaces that you have. It's your internet service provider, your company's network infrastructure, then it's a gateway scenario, then it goes to a payment processor, then it's handed off to a foreign payment processor. It's extraordinary the number of hops that take place to just effectuate one transaction.
And, so then, I'm thinking of your whiteboard and people are like, whoa, the aha moment, the light bulb, whatever. But at the same time, they're playing traffic cop. They want to keep things moving, and friction, as we say, the F word is the enemy. And so how do you balance that out?
Well, so first of all, no one wants to meet with the chief risk officer or general counsel. Let's just admit that from the threshold. But I'm comfortable with that. And what we often talk about in the digital commerce ecosystem is this whole concept of cart abandonment, right? It's the prevention of sales. What kind of friction do we put in the process that actually prevents people from going through to a full transaction? And what I often say to folks is, hang on, let's step back and recognize that, especially in the B2B realm, there are actors, actual humans that are having B2C interactions in their personal life that are going to color their perspective on a lot of these issues. So when you think of things like two-factor authentication or ACAPTCHA, ACAPTCHA is one of the most simple but effective brute force, if you will, solutions to deal with these card testing schemes that a lot of the fraudsters do when they buy the credit card numbers online and then attack legitimate businesses with those transactions. But I remind folks that, hey, if you bought tickets to a basketball game, a football game, or a concert, you're going through that process already. And if anything, you expect to have the same kind of, it's a little annoying, but that little bit of friction that tells you, hey, this person on the other end of this transaction actually cares about the security of my credit card data. And again, that's where I always step back with folks and I say, well, hang on, hold on to the friction. Let's look at what everybody else is doing. In a lot of cases, many of their competitors have that same friction because they're trying to protect their customers' data as well. And then we're also seeing some incredible changes in the landscape where little things like your Apple phone becomes almost a device fingerprinting. So you can go beyond simple ACAPTCHA, and you're now able to use everything from biometrics to provide that second layer of two-factor authentication.
Yeah, and we're seeing so much of that too. I'm actually surprised as an Atlantan you didn't invoke baseball, but that's kind of a conversation for another day. So let me just talk about this. In the news biz, we just cover these attacks and whether they're phishing or full-on hacks and data breaches all the time. I mean, is there a sense of inevitability? I mean, is batting 1,000 to use the baseball theme here? Is that even possible?
So I don't believe that it's possible, but I do believe you can take some simple steps to eliminate the bulk of it. And I think the reality is with that fragmentation in that digital ecosystem that I described earlier, there's always going to be avenues for fraudsters. And I always tell folks, the sad reality is fraud comes from all directions and from all forms. It comes from your own employees. It comes from other areas in that supply chain. And if you can sit down with that whiteboard exercise and really try to use some common sense tools that are widely available, like the ACAPTCHA for the card testing, like the two-factor authentication in some scenarios, but there are also some incredible technologies now where you can do voice print when people call in and ask to change their card numbers. There are things that you can do and be aware of that will minimize your exposure. It won't eliminate it, but it will minimize it.
Is there what are the metrics that you guys throw around in terms of the, amount of fraud, the gains that you're making in terms of rolling it back, the growth, the correlation between, digital usage, digital commerce, digital bill paying, et cetera?
Yeah, well, there's actually the most important metric is the one I refer to as the silent metric. And that is the folks that won't do business with you because of the reputational aspects of this. And we can quantify for you and a typical card testing attack, the tens of thousands of dollars that can hit a legitimate business overnight in some cases. But what I would say is your biggest risk is your reputation, and it's someone choosing not to do business with you in the first place because they have seen your brand associated with an attack. And you will actually see multiple businesses that have been in these well-publicized attacks, their business actually drops off. But the more important thing, it isn't just their same store sales or the folks that they already have relationships with. You wonder how many of those people that would have done business with them went somewhere else because of what they found on Google about that business and the way it protects their data.
Yeah, or it's the person that, was a good customer and then just silently, hey, well, what went wrong here? It's the soggy French fries that you serve that you never heard about that you wanted to know about, and you've lost the relationship forever over something that was arguably preventable or addressable.
Yes, there's many of us that don't go on Yelp and scream about the restaurant. We just quietly never return, and that really concerns me, certainly. And I think that all of our business to business folks out there in the marketplace want to really be thinking, again, with an orientation to what would I as a consumer expect the business to do to protect my data and my credit card number and my financial information, because that's the person who's actually interacting with you in the business scenario. Someone who has those same fears in their personal life, bring those to the office.
I like that idea. I mean, I hate the idea, but I'm interested in that whole silent, what did you call it? The silent vote, or that's certainly something that people need to be aware of. Chris, is there something that we overlooked here today?
Well, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't throw in a shameless plug that if you're looking for security solutions, I always point to unified offerings such as Versapay, where we take the information from your embedded ERP solution, whether it's Oracle NetSuite or it's Microsoft Intact, and we feed that into our accounts receivable cloud software and then on to our embedded payment solutions. There we can minimize some of the fraud because we have that unified ecosystem that we control, and we reduce some of those natural handoffs and fragmentation in the supply chain.
Cool. Chris, great to catch up with you. I look forward to seeing you up on the 26th floor with your new view the next time we cross paths. But as always, good to catch up with our friends at Versapay. Chris Wasson, our Chief Risk Officer. Excellent insights. Always appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.